Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lingua Loom. Today we're going to start another episode of the Tracing the Classics series, which is episode number 7 related to Alexander Pope, and the topic name is An Essay on Criticism, written in quite a lot of time, aka 1711. So let's start the topic. Before starting the topic, please do like, subscribe and share and comment, as it means quite a lot for the channel. So let's start. First, the man and his movement, as we start with introduction. So Alexander Pope wrote an essay on criticism remarkably early in his career, drafted around 1707 to 1708. The poem was published anonymously in May 1711 when Pope was only 23. It was Pope's most ambitious work to that point, and it announced him immediately as the major voice in English letters, even before the public knew his name. The poem belongs to the well-established genre, a verse treatise and poetic and critical principle, descending directly from Horace or Poetica, continuing through Marcus' Renaissance Latin poem De Ars Poetica, and Nicolas Boileau's French L'Art Poétique. So Pope's choice of English word essay in his title also links the word to the prose tradition of Francis Bacon or Michael de Montaigne, signaling that despite its verse form, the poem aims at the same probing, exploratory intellectual seriousness as this prose essay. The early 18th century in England, the Augustan Age, surprised exactly the qualities Pope's poem embodies, which is reasoned argument, formal balance, wit, and the reverence of classical models understood as expression of rational, divinely ordered nature. So Pope was writing into active contemporary debate about whether poetry should be free and natural, or governed by inherent classical rules. So these are the arguments that he claimed, and he defended poetry. So it was in part an attempt to own Pope's part of identity and refine his own position as poet and critic, and his response to an ongoing critical debate which centered on the question of whether poetry should be natural or written according to predetermined artificial rules inherited from the classical past. So that was the introduction. Let's move forward. Text. The verse as critical argument. His work, An Essay on Criticism, is written entirely in heroic couplet paired of rhymed lines in iambic pentameter, a form Pope would make his signature across his career. This formal choice is itself a critical strategy. And moving forward, the poem is not systematically philosophical treatise in a manner of Aristotle. It proceeds with star, aphorism, vivid image, and exhortation, closer in spirit to Horace's Conversation or Poetica than to logical sequence argument. Yet beneath its wit and its memorable one-liner lies a coherent, carefully structured position on the nature of good judgment, good writing, and a proper relationship between nature, rules, and individual genius. So it's hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill, but of the two, less dangerous is this advance to tire our patience than mislead our sense. So this is from line from the work. Three-part structure. Pope divided his 734 lines into three movements, each addressing a distinct aspect of critical task. Let's first look at them. Part 1, 200 lines. Subject is the qualities and role of good critic. Core argument is established that bad judgment is more dangerous than bad writing. Introduces nature, wit, and judgment as foundational triad. Argues that rules of art are nature memorized, not arbitrarily imposed. And part 2, which consists of 15 lines, the common faults of critics. Diagnoses pride as a chief cause of bad judgment. Surveys specific critical words. Voices excessive love of wit, obsession with rules of a substance, envy, counsels humility and caution. Then comes part 3, the morals and manners. proper to the ideal critic, describe the quality of true critic, modesty, courage, candor, to speak truth without malice, and chose closes with the historical survey of great critics. So this is what his work is, that how a critic should act, how they should criticize a certain sort of work. It is not like that they can just say whatever they want, because a critic's judgment is much more important. So the four key concepts, first one is nature. The supreme standard of judgment denotes not merely the physical world, but the rational or the divinely structured principle underlying the universe. So this is it all. Just you can read the details if you want. Pause and you can read it. Then comes wit and judgment. Wit and judgment must work together like man and wife, though they are often at odds, but they still should go hand in hand. Then comes rule as memorized nature. Pope's resolution of the ancient versus rules debate critical. Rules are not arbitrary inventions but discoveries. They simply formalize patterns already present in nature itself, as first identified by the ancient poets. So you can pause and read it in detail if you want to. Then the fourth concept, okay, just scroll it up, but nameless graces, license. Even after establishing rule as a proper standard, Pope acknowledges that true genius sometimes transcends those very rules through nameless graces, and that the critic must be sophisticated enough to recognize this transcendence rather than condemning it. Okay, let's move forward. Famous epigrams, a one-man proverb factory. Pope have been called the most quotable authors in English language after Shakespeare, and three lines from his single poem written when Pope was just 21 to 23 have become permanent fixture of everyday English speech. It is worth examining in its original critical context, since common usage often has stripped away from the surrounding arguments. So let's look at them. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep, or taste not a Parian spring. So the Parian spring in Greek mythology was sacred to the Muses, a symbol of artistic and intellectual knowledge. Pope's point is a critic who has learned enough to feel clever but not enough able to recognize the limits of that knowledge is more dangerous than one who is honestly ignorant. The remedy is not learning but also drinking deep. This says that critics should not learn only surface knowledge. They should deep into the knowledge and know exactly what they're talking about, how they're criticizing. Their judgment should be of supreme standard. They should not just make criticism on the surface level. It is more dangerous. So it's better to be ignorant than to have a foul knowledge. Then to err is human, to forgive divine. Appears in Pope discussion. Critics, in their haste to expose flaws, should remember that forgiveness toward imperfect genius is itself a virtue, and the perfection is not realistic standard against which any human work should be judged. Then the third one is for fowls rush in where angels tend to fear. A warning against a hasty, overconfident critic who ventures bold judgment without caution, the true expertise and true humility would counsel. The line captures the theme like us. He said that a critic should not make haste in making judgment and do criticism. They should focus on text clearly and then make up and come up with judgments. Then Pope and the critical tradition. Pope write self-consciously within, and these are some of the predecessors and the relationships to poets, essay like Hurst's work, the foundational model of verse treatise on poetic craft. Then comes the second one in Marco Girolamo with his work. This also influence have in his work. Then come Nicolas Boileau, French neoclassical codification of Horatian principle. Then comes Pope and Ascent criticism. This is in English, dealing with also showing some of the glimpse of these works and debating about how a critic should be. Then common misconceptions, or first one is Pope simply argues that poet must obey classical rules without exception. Well, this is not right actually. He just mentioned them that classical rules should be at least addressed, but it is not only specified that they should be followed. A critic can come up with their own genius too. A little learning is dangerous thing means education itself is dangerous. Well, this is entirely wrong and misconception about him, as he said that if we want to learn something and if we are learning something, we should go deep into it because having half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge. Then come Pope's nature means simply the physical, natural world, trees, animal, plants. Well, that's not entirely true too. This is a misconception too. For him, nature includes everything in a recognized principle of order tied to the divine and other philosophical and theological concepts too. Then essay and criticism is primarily a work of literary theory in the modern academic sense. Well, it is better understood as a poem combining star, aphorism, and moral exhortation in a Horatian mode, close to verse counsel for poets. Its enduring power lies precisely in the compression and poetic weight. Then let's look at key terms. Heroic couplet, a pair of rhymed lines in iambic pentameter, the dominant verse form of English neoclassical poetry. Then comes wit, not mere verbal cleverness or humour, but a faculty of inventing intelligence, imaginative perception, and creative power. Then comes nature memorized, Pope's formula for the relationship between artistic rules and nature. Rules are not invented arbitrarily but discovered by observing the practice of great poets. Then Parian, spring. In Greek mythology, a fountain near Mount Olympus, sacred to the Muses, symbolizes the source of artistic and intellectual inspiration and knowledge. Then come nameless graces, Pope's term for the rare, mysterious qualities of true genius that allows a master poet to transcend established rule and produce work more powerful for the transgression. These are the key terms. Then comes the legacy. Well, Pope's legacy starts from 1707 to 1708. First drafts began in this era, began at Eberley. Then comes 1711, anonymous publication. Then 1712, early critical reception. The essay received an enthusiastic review from Addison about his work. Then comes Johnson's assessment, which is 1779 to 1781, in which he presented his assessment. Then proverbial absorption into English. A little learning is a dangerous thing. To err is human, to forgive divine, and fools rush in where angels tend to fear. Entered everyday English. Then continued pedagogical use. The essay remains a staple text in university and neoclassical. So that's what today's topic is about. You can check out the references. You can pause the video and check out them and read them in detail if you want to. So that's it for today. I hope you understand it. It's as simple as it. Here, as Pope taught about that how a critic should behave and how a critic should do criticism and make judgments about certain works. That's all for today. I hope you understand it. Do like, subscribe, and share. And thanks for watching. Have a good day.